to the Business Blueprint Podcast, where we take you on an exciting adventure through our triumphs and challenges and failures in creating and maintaining a thriving 6, 7, and 8-figure business. Get ready to dive into our strategies, decisions, and yes, even valuable lessons we've learned from our missteps. But that's not all. We'll also bring you industry-leading guests who will provide you with their priceless insights and wisdom. Stay tuned because the captivating journey of the Business Blueprint begins right now. Hi, I'm Charles Hatley with the Business Blueprint. And today I'm joined by Dan Cuneo. And what we wanted to talk about was something a little bit interesting to me and to Mr. Cuneo. And that was the idea of mentorship. You know, as we continue to grow in an organization, one of our goals was to provide mentorship and education and teachings to everybody within our organization about everything we do. You know, we strive to be completely transparent. So, we're developing a mentorship program for managers. We're developing a mentorship program for employees in the production space. We're trying to develop this across the board mentorship program. And what that started creating for us was this question of what is mentorship? So, when you look at what is mentorship, sometimes the answer may seem easy, but even a more difficult question is, what is a good mentor and what is a good mentee? So Dan, I wanted to ask you, when you think about what a good mentee, well, first of all, what is a mentee? I mean, that's kind of a funny way to say it. And then what is a good mentee?
Sure. A mentee should be an employee who's wanting to learn and grow within the realm of their role and responsibilities. And then a good mentee would be someone who knows exactly what it is that they're wanting and then wanting to find that right person. And it's a two-step process. And the hard one, quite honestly, I think is really being that mentee and figuring out, okay, this is what I need, or this is what I can improve on. And then once you know that, then identifying who that person would be, and then speaking with that person and really creating a plan as far as what that looks like. Because a lot of individuals or employees think, okay, someone's going to assign me a mentor and they're just going to guide me along the way. And I just sit back and just maybe absorb. But a good mentee is going to be more actively engaged. And that's really the next step, in my opinion, is once you identify what it is that you're wanting to improve on or learn, and you've identified who that mentor will be, then it's okay, let's create a plan. What does this relationship look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's very important when you are the person seeking the information to know what you want. And that's a burden, right? The old adage of you don't know what you don't know. It rings true here. So how do you get across that barrier of you don't know what you don't know?
It's about asking questions. And I always, it goes back to there's no such thing as a bad question or a dumb question, except for the ones that aren't asked. And as the mentee, you want to take advantage of the time of the mentor that he or she is giving you and just soak it in by asking questions, and start by the most mundane questions, or the ones that you think, okay, well, I should know this, but at that relationship is treated as a confidential one, because that mentor is just as engaged and want you to succeed as you want to succeed. So make sure that you've established that relationship and that trust. And once you have that trust and relationship, then you'll feel more comfortable to ask any question, because the more questions you ask, the more you're going to learn. And of course, the more you learn, the better you're going to be at your job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the idea that the mentor wants you to succeed just as bad as you do is somewhat of a double-edged sword, right? Because if you only show kind of a half-hearted approach to it, then the mentor is probably going to give you a half-hearted amount of effort. If you go in 100% and willing to do whatever it takes to learn, the mentor is probably going to match your energy. When I think about looking for a mentor, I personally try to find somebody that's going to match my personality a little bit. I'm very much so a person who believes that almost anything that happens around me can be traced back to being my fault. Fault being a negative connotation word, but it can have a positive connotation too, right? If it's success, it may be my fault. If it's failure, it is my fault. So how important is it to make sure the personalities match?
It's extremely important, because you want to make sure you have that good synergy between the two. Because if the personalities don't match, neither one of you are going to get a lot out of this relationship. And it
Mhm.
could come to the point where it's just not good use of either one of your times. It's not really being efficient. But once you have that good match, then you have that relationship and you have that trust. And you know that you can go to that person, not just during mentor mentee times, but just pick up the phone, send them a message or an email. And then you foster that relationship, which would just hopefully continue throughout your career. There's really not a defined time. You can set defined time as in, okay, on one day a week, we're going to meet, we're going to talk about what's going on, but utilize that to really soak in knowledge and ask the questions. But as the week progresses, start journaling some things that come up. So when you have that designated time, you can talk about it and say, here's an issue that came up. Here's how I handled it. What would you have done differently? Or these are these issues that are coming up. Here's kind of what I'm thinking about, but let that mentor weigh in. But you always want to go in with suggestions and solutions. You just don't want to go in and say, here's my problem or here's an issue. What do I do? Because you're not getting anything out of it. The more that you can provide thought behind solutions, the more that you're going to learn. And you're spot on. The failures really can be successes. 9 out of 10 times, we're going to learn more from our failures than we are from our success because we don't want to repeat it. And we learn much more from when we fail. You're going to fall more than you're going to stand. And as long as you can accept the fact that just because you may not get something right or because you may fail at something, and really fail is a negative word. You may not succeed at something your first time. That's okay. We're going to do it again, and you will succeed. But having that mentor be that guidance or that safety net, at least in the beginning, is just really crucial and paramount to your success and your journey as an employee.
Mm-hmm. It is. And another part of being a mentee that I think is a lost skill is understanding what you talked about, which is the failure, in my opinion, and I think you and I share this wholeheartedly, is the most important part of anything. You learn more from failure, I mean, than anything else, in my opinion, right? You know, if you stepped up to bat and you hit a home run on your first swing, you're never going to learn how to run the bases. You're never going to learn how to steal a base, right? You're always hitting home runs. Nobody does that. So it has to be like, oh man, I struck out. Now I can steal first base, you know, to use a sports metaphor. And you would never know that unless you struck out and the catcher happened to drop the ball. But you know, to get away from the sports metaphors, you have to be willing to lay yourself bare and say, look, I messed up this thing. And you have to be willing to accept when the mentor says, well, what did you do? All right, now let's trace back what you did wrong. What could you have done better? What could you have done differently? And not take it as insulting. I
Mm-hmm.
know personally, when I'm talking to people, I have a very bad habit of saying, well, I'll give you an easy answer and a bad answer. You want the hard answer or the easy answer first? And the easy answer is, well, this is what could have done, particularly in the case. The hard answer is, well, it's your fault. And then I start trying to build from there. So how do you handle it when you have somebody that just points the finger at you and says, well, it's your fault?
As the mentee, you have to realize that that person has your best interest. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, making sure you have that right match. And if you trust that person and they are coming at you and they're saying it's your fault, then as a mentee, accept it, be vulnerable, and ask, okay, what could I have done differently? This is what I think I could have done differently. But you, as the mentor, help me understand what I could have done better. And as long as both parties have that understanding that we're in it to grow together, then it can be a really productive and fruitful relationship because the mentor is going to learn from the mentee. I
Mhm.
always have the opinion, anytime that I'm a mentor or any conversation I have, I really want to walk away with learning something new. And maybe something minuscule or it could be something life changing. But I want to make sure that I'm learning something from whomever I'm talking to because it's a two-way street. It's not a one-way street. The mentee isn't just going to be taking up the time and the energy of the mentor. It's we want both parties essentially to be engaged, and that's what's going to make that really the most productive relationship.
Mhm. And you know, both of us, I know for a fact, I've been on both sides of this coin, the mentor and the mentee side. And I assume that you have too, because most of the people I meet that, you know, gain any level of success generally have been open to seeking mentors. And at the same time, they've been open to giving their time to help people succeed. So have you been in both shoes before?
Oh yeah, I've been fortunate to be in a really good position where I had someone kind of guide me along, but then I've been in just awful ones to where it was I went and talked to someone and like, okay, what do you got? And I was like, well, to your point, I don't know what I have. This is what I'm thinking, but am I even in the same ballpark, right? Or am I just somewhere in a different universe and I just have no idea? And then you just start second guessing yourself, and it really makes a mentee just uh, be deflated, and their self-confidence just you lose it, and then you're
Mhm.
just really it's a slippery slope, because then once the mentee feels like he or she's feeling and they're going down that path of maybe I'm not good enough for this, then everything just starts to unravel, and it's not good for that relationship, it's not good for the mentee, and it's not good for the company. And so
Mhm.
it made me think, okay, in the future, if I'm ever lucky enough to be a mentor, I want to make sure that I'm providing the proper guidance. And sometimes it's giving that tough love, which is, yes, to your point, you did this wrong or it's your fault, but it's how can I say that to make sure that I'm not hurting that person's feelings and really making them feel that it's punitive, because a relationship isn't punitive. It's more, what can I do to help you to continue to succeed? And the most successful people, in my opinion, are the ones that I can identify. Yes, I know I failed or I'm going to fail, but what can I do better? Well, I just continue to ask questions. The more questions that are asked, I truly believe the more that both parties are going to learn. Even in meetings that I have with just our fellow colleagues and I'm doing case reviews, I'm always learning something
Mhm.
because I'm asking questions and they're asking questions of me. And a lot of times those questions are great questions, like, I never thought of it that way. And then you
Mhm.
get into a great discussion or debate, which is always moving that case forward and helping the client, but it's just strategizing together. And when you can do that and you have that comfort level and that trust, great things come from them.
It does. And, when you're trying to discover, ask questions, you don't know what you don't know. Getting into these conversations is where that comes from. For example, every Tuesday and Thursday, I do a group mentorship over Teams, or over Microsoft Teams with people. And, today we got into a really good conversation about that, these things were going this way, then that way. Then we went off on a tangential point, and all of a sudden it was, hey, look, here's this thing that we had no intention of talking about, but I noticed everybody start taking notes real quick. And Mhm. I was so thankful as the mentor that the mentees had put the effort in to start talking, to start asking questions, to start pushing back, because eventually we cracked the egg of knowledge that they were looking for that I didn't even know they were looking for. And it was like, holy, this is great. All these people are excited now. So, how do you, when you're talking to people, get them to talk to you from a mentor point of view?
Two things. One, I was in a group setting a few months ago. I visited one of our offices, and I had all the attorneys, all the staff there. And I opened it up and I said, everyone's checking their egos at the door. No one here has a title, and everything remains confidential. We want to foster that open relationship. Cell phones down. Do not look at your cell phones. Do not check email, because I want everyone to be engaged. And it was a slow burn at first, right? We had a slow start, but then it's just I asked some silly random question that was so out of left field that generated some interest, because they were like, "Wait a second, what?" And then others started chiming in, and then to your point, it just morphed into something else. And then
Mhm.
you got that open and honest discussion and feedback. And as the mentor, kind of in that situation, I said, "No, listen, what can I do better? What can I do to support you?" And there was silence. And then I just threw out some, again, weird ideas. And then it started morphing into a really good, productive conversation. And in the relationship that I have with some of our current managers, I it was their first time in this type of relationship. And I remember my first time. It's uncomfortable. You have that awkward silence because you're like, do I ask a question? Do I wait? What do I do? So I just came up with this really, again, weird idea for the firm that we weren't even going to implement, but it just made them think, wait a second, what are you talking about here? And it opened up that dialogue. And then I kind of navigated it back to what we really wanted to, and to what you're talking about with that teams meeting in the MHU next. It's a wonderful thing to see, because you can see it in their face and their expression when that idea goes off, like, oh, wait a second, and then you just start talking about it, because no idea is too big or too small. Everything works. Let's figure out what can we do to make it happen, whether it's today, tomorrow, in the future. But I really want to get mentees and just even everyone within the firm or your company, you want to get them just thinking about what can we do to make not just my job better, but for the company better. Because if you start thinking that bigger picture, then these mentees become your leaders, and that's how you can start growing your leaders. Hi, this is Dan Cuneo with the Business Blueprint. Thank you for taking time to listen to this week's podcast. Please join us next week for part 2.
Thanks for tuning in. If you found this insightful and entertaining, be sure to hit subscribe below and join us on social media to get more insight into what we are going through each and every day.